Hello, and thank you for downloading this episode of Radio Juxtapoz. My name's Doug. Together with my co-host Evan, who's currently feeling a little bit fluey and didn't want to do the intro, today you can listen to Evan's interview with the French superstar JR. The pair caught up about a month ago over in San Francisco while JR was in town installing a huge interactive mural for SFMOMA. Now, if you want to get straight into the interview with JR, skip forward right now to about minute 20. If not, you can listen to me and Evan dissect his latest project at the Louvre in Paris. And as if that wasn't enough, after the interview with JR, me and Evan go on to dissect some of the latest art news that's going on around the world, so you can hear us talk about anything from cause to the latest Mercedes scandal involving street art. If you enjoy this, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Let's get on with the show. Oh, what's in that cup today? You got a little whiskey in there.
I could use some whiskey, man. I've not been feeling well. I have been sick, but we're making it work. For the sake of the podcast, we're making it work.
So talk to me, baby. How are you? Where are you? What you doing?
I'm in San Francisco. Just got back from lovely Paris, France on a work vacation, I guess you can call it. It was good timing. Got to see the kind of incredible JR Louvre 30th anniversary of the Pyramid experience, which was really hard to tell what it was going to be until it was done. And then when it was done, it was like, Jesus. It was very impressive.
So you say that was a coincidence? Was that purely coincidental, or was there like I'm definitely going to Paris for this?
No, it was a bit coincidental, a bit when I talked to JR for this later podcast, he had mentioned he was going to be there at the same time. So it all worked out. Man, the vibe was cool. I just think when you have volunteers helping you and like having the public help you on a project like that, it just makes everybody feel just a little bit more included. I think it's a really smart idea. I thought it was really well done and well organized and well executed.
So talk me through that vibe, because I only, like most of us, I live through the lens of Instagram story. So what was it? He had 400 volunteers down over a period of, 48 hours, 24 hours?
I think it was a little bit over 48 hours where he had, it was basically going to be a 4-day installation, I believe, but only like 2 days where the full thing was there and done. He took over the kind of plaza where the pyramid is at the Louvre, and did this ground wheat paste project where it created this illusion that you were I can't even really describe, but it created this this kind of 3D illusion that you were going underground at the site of the pyramid to celebrate the 30th anniversary, which is crazy to me that pyramid's now 30 years old. Because I remember when it first went up. That makes me feel kind of old.
Wow. How do you remember that?
For some reason, I don't know.
How old are you, man?
I am the ripe old age of 37.
Shit, you can remember that at 7? I can't remember anything at 7.
28 years ago. Fuck, I don't know. But it was cool because he had all these volunteers cutting the wheat paste and wheat pasting them down on the ground, and it just kind of made this sort of fun, interactive project that got all these people involved, and he was there the whole time, talking to people and just being, positive influence over everybody. And I just thought it was cool because he was there and involved, and kind of his energy was really palpable and got other people feeling pretty excited about the whole thing.
I think one of his biggest sort of USPs is his energy,
100%,
and the way that he interacts with people on a set or on a project. I really do believe that that's his hook, because he is, like, you can love him or hate him, but he's a charismatic character, and he does definitely give off that kind of aura of like, yeah, I want to be in this.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, it's one of those things too. I mean, and on a smaller scale, but you and I had this discussion with Lucy Sparrow back in December. It's just like he's part of the project, even though he's not in the final result. But it's like he is so essential to what is actually happening. And, for his ascension in the art world or public art world or just projects, it's like he's becoming more like a Jean-Claude and Christo than he is, a street artist. So that's fascinating to watch and to see how this has evolved over the last 15 years or so. It's like when I think of like the most popular artists in the world, I never include him. It's like I think we gotta start doing that because he's so popular and so big and so ambitious now with his scope.
Why do you think it is then that you wouldn't include him in that? Because you definitely like very coherently use the term artist rather than ballparking in this street art bracket, which becomes a different thing. If you say who's a popular artist or who's a popular street artist,
right,
and I guess that's on a street level. I mean, why do you think it is that you wouldn't include him in either of those? If you were told popular artist versus popular street artist, do you think you would include him in either of those two lists, or are they both synonymous?
Well, where would you put where would you put Christo? Like site specific, it's like that weird thing where you're like, well, what, it's I wouldn't call him a street artist so much anymore, and he's much more than a photographer. Obviously, I think he's like it's just kind of like these mega projects, which I don't really know how to categorize those. I don't really quite know, like what we talk about in the podcast later, his project in San Francisco. It's not street art per se. It's like documentary mixed with photography, mixed with storytelling, mixed with fine artwork, there's so many different parts of it. Whereas the same thing with the Louvre, like it's not street art really. He's kind of grown out of that.
This is the thing that is kind of, I guess, genre busting for lack of a real term. It couldn't be more street because it's at a street level in a public place.
Right.
But because it's in partnership with the institution, the epitome of an art establishment,
right,
it then it becomes null and void in any term of what you would call street art. So it's this weird place where it is kind of, it exists in both. And it's got the ephemerality of any of the most raw of pieces of street art.
And I'm sure you feel the same way, like his wheat paste and photography back on the early days when he really started to kind of take off. Like there's some really, really iconic stuff, really iconic imagery, iconic projects in the favelas. There was like that really great photo of the guy with the video cam that looks like a gun. Like
that's got to be one of the greatest photos of the last, it's not even 10 years now. I think that might be pushing over that. That's got to be closer to 15, 20. But that's got to be one of the most iconic images. The young guy who everyone perceives to be holding a gun because he's, there's a group of young black kids and they're standing in the banlieue in Paris and he's holding what you think is a gun, but it's actually just a camera. And it was like, that was subversion. And I almost to a degree missed that rawness that he was really encapsulating back then. I don't know if he's necessarily done that recently. His Women Are Heroes campaign was amazing. His Face to Face in 2009 in the Israel-Palestine region was, I thought as a concept, I think it actually had a bit of backlash because people thought it was a big prank from the Israelis. the Palestinians were like, the Israelis are playing a prank on us. But I think as a concept, I think it worked incredibly well. And I like that energy from old school JR.
Well, and that really incredible photo of the baby looking over the U.S. border,
that was
from last year. I mean, that was so good.
That was old JR. That was old JR right there. Because he did the Olympic thing, and that was it was cool institutional art, and it looked cool. But then he kind of came out and he did the border piece. That was old school JR, nailed right there.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing is, when I think of the pantheon of street art, I think of Banksy and Shepard and Swoon, Fail, and then it's you forget that JR is right in there with them because he's kind of gone into these different directions that you forget that he has some of these really, really pinnacle moments of what street art was to become. So it was great I hadn't seen him work in a while, so just to see his energy, like you were saying earlier, it was just I was like, all right, It's pretty legit. I mean, obviously he was excited. He's doing something at the Louvre. You can't really beat that.
I mean, especially as a Parisian artist, like that's your home turf, and you've made it.
100%.
The thing is with this Louvre piece is you see this final like pristine, perfectly positioned perspective. What did it look like on the ground compared to what that result was through the kind of the this is what I'm posting on social media versus this is my reality?
I mean, when myself and a couple of my friends showed up, like, you couldn't tell at all. But we were there pretty early on in the process, so it wasn't like we were like, you couldn't really tell. But like when you're on the level and you're cutting some of the wheat paste, you're like, you couldn't quite tell what was going to happen. It wasn't, and he was pretty good at not sharing photos of like what it was becoming until kind of later on in the process. So when I woke up, it must have been Friday or Saturday morning, and saw his Instagram, I was like, okay. Like, I couldn't tell. You couldn't really get the idea of like what it was becoming. You just knew it was like, you could kind of start seeing these kind of like morphing pieces, but like from ground level, you can't tell.
It was quite funny in that respect then how tailor-made this institutional piece of art, this institutional intervention was tailor-made to the snapshot generation of the social media, viewer. It was, this is how you look at it. This is what this project looked like. This is the angle you're going to see this from. And in reality, you're still going to be looking at images coming out over the next week, but this lasted less than 24 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And it just felt so tailor-made to that, like that quick snapshot generation, which is there's a juxtaposition there.
Well, what's interesting is that, to me, I was thinking about that as well. And like, what angle can the average person get, to see from a little bit higher above? And I was thinking, like, it's kind of the same way people go and see the Mona Lisa. They just go and run and take a photo real quick and run away. Like, there is something kind of funny about blockbuster art, how some people just kind of go real quick and take a photo of it and leave just so they can Instagram it real quick. But this, this might have, I didn't go back, but I wonder if people were like really gaming to find that right, going into the Louvre and trying to find the right angle to take a photo outside a window. I'm not sure.
Did you see where that perspective was?
It would have been on top of the museum, looking down, behind the pyramid, looking down. Okay. Which is crazy because the Louvre is so damn big that you're looking at all these buildings around you, you're like, this is all like the most famous art in the world from the last like 500 years, 600 years all around you. And here's this guy doing this street art project in front of it. Like there's a really cool dichotomy there of like, this art that's in these buildings has lasted 600 years plus, and this gentleman is making a piece of art that's going to last 24 hours, but have like a massive impact. We live in such a weird time.
Do you think going forward 100 years that these guys will have a place within that institution? Particularly, let's say the Louvre and JR. An invader because he's Parisian as well.
Man, there's so many invaders in Paris. I can't.
You can't talk about Paris street art without talking about invader because he's just so synonymous with that city, that scene. And of course you've got Black, and there's such a rich history in Paris, and it continues to reinvent itself, and Paris continues to feel fresh. And I think it does it in a way that London is struggling with just now. London had a moment, and it's not quite got back up to that place that it was in 2002, and Paris seems to continue to maintain a position within that relevancy. But do you think there will be a place in the Louvre for guys like, Jeff Aerosol and Vader, Black, JR in 100 years?
It's going to be a very, very interesting discussion. I would like to think that a couple of these people will indeed be included because it is such a big chunk now of Paris's art history, is this like graffiti street art movement. I would think that JR would probably be the one that will peek his way through.
More so than others.
In the names that you listed.
Because he's established himself well, he's still very active in there.
Because he's kind of doing this, only if you go back 100 years and look at any art movement, only like 4 or 5 people make it through, right? Like it's never that many people that make it through into the history book.
Sure.
So we're going to have to, even though certain people are popular, we're going to have to eliminate their names from the history books because that's just the way it works, unfortunately. But I don't see JR having a problem being institutionalized. That doesn't sound right. Sorry, Chair. I didn't mean to say it that way. His artwork being put into the institutional context, I don't think he'll have a problem being in museums 100 years from now at all. But, it's funny. You were talking about Paris. Man, Paris still has a rawness that, like, London, New York, and San Francisco kind of don't have as much anymore. I mean, they do. Those cities do have a rawness. But Paris still has, there's some sort of vibe there that's a little bit more raw than I feel like when I'm in London. I could be wrong.
I feel it every time I go to Paris, and that's kind of what I was alluding to there. I don't know specifically what it is. I can't put my finger on it. I think it's maybe the authenticity of the architecture, the choice of restaurants and coffee shops and everything. You don't feel overwhelmed with, I know this chain, I know this restaurant, I know my options. It feels, there's something about that experience that continues to feel authentic, and I think that comes through in the art.
I think Paris feels very singular to me. Like it's London, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. So you can find commonalities and you feel comfortable in those places. Granted, the English helps a little bit there, but Paris just has this very singular kind of its own thing, and you can feel it as soon as you're just like taking the train into the city. You're like, all right, this is different, and I really really like it. And I was lucky enough to have some friends there who's, got me around and showed me some things. But, yeah, there's just some sort of, and there's a little bit of that kind of like highfalutin sort of we're better than you vibe too, which I appreciate. I'm fine with it. It's cool. San Franciscans have the same thing, so it's not.
I was about to say, as an American, that must be different because we get that a lot as Europeans going to America.
What's interesting as an American in Paris is that Americans think of Paris as like where like a lot of like our great art came from, especially in terms of writers. Like that's where all the great American writers went after World War I. Like the Lost Generation was like Paris was this place where a lot of American art was made for Americans. So it's weird when you go there and feel like, wow, there's like a big chunk of all the things I grew up with came from this city. But the Parisians don't care for us so much. It's like cool. I kind of like it. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we have an interview that you did with JR back in San Francisco about a month ago in the run-up to this particular project. So we'll play that. Listener, you'll either get that now or you'll get it at the end of the episode. We haven't figured out where this sits yet. We do literally no prep on this.
We just press record, say hi, and then we get going.
There is at some point going to be an interview with JR. Which you can look forward to, or you're already listening to it. I don't know.
And the premise of the conversation is that JR spent about a year in San Francisco. He built this monumental interactive mural that will sit in the atrium of SFMOMA for a while. That basically tells the story of San Francisco as the city exists right now. It's not a historical thing. It's more of like the most contemporary look at the city. And he interviewed politicians, athletes, regular people on the street. It addresses the homeless problem. It addresses the extraordinary high cost of living here, and just how the history of San Francisco has led us to this kind of weird moment in the city I live in. So it's fascinating. And I kind of like that somebody not from the city did it, because I think it gives it an interesting genuineness, which I like.
I've been actually, I had a museum show in Paris, and I did zero interview at all for the whole museum show. And it was interesting because then people went, made their own view, and then people wrote throughout what people say, and I like that too also. But, right. Here I'm excited to speak about it because it's a piece of a work I've never done also. Yeah. So, it depends. I actually more rarely do interviews and kind of hide a bit more behind the shades. But actually during the day when I pace the stuff, I'm in interview all day with people.
Right, yeah.
Because, people come and say, hey, what are you doing? And it's their city, their place, so you got to
That's one of the things about like this new public art, street art kind of generation. Like you do spend a lot of time actually there,
explaining your work all day.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have like a go-to when you come to San Francisco now? Like, do you like, all right, I gotta go make sure that I go get coffee here, I have dinner here.
I think walk on the beach. That's something that I'd never do before.
Okay.
When I come here.
Okay.
And now I do it always.
As someone who grew up in San Francisco, that'd be the last thing I would think.
Exactly, but
because usually it's foggy and cold, and I never think to do it. But okay, all right.
Just for the sound of the waves.
Right. Yeah.
Never been in the water here, but just for the sound of the wave.
We have sharks. Be careful.
Oh yeah, really? But anybody got attacked or no?
I don't know if that's true, but like when you see Jaws as a kid, and all of a sudden like it just ruins everything for you. That's kind of like.
Because it was shot there, like.
No, it's just the fact that they tell you there's sharks in the water.
Yeah.
It's kind of I don't know. But that's interesting because I never think I actually live a block from the water and I forget that I live by the ocean. It's just one of these things where it's like just kind of subconscious.
So
I guess.
For me, here is the most exciting thing.
Okay.
That we're surrounded by water.
Right. Did you spend a lot of time in San Francisco before this project, or?
Before, I would always come 2-3 days, so I never got to understand the city.
Right.
And that's why after a while, the people keep telling me, you should come by. And I was like, well, it was never, I would come here if I had to, but I would spend 2-3 days, boom, out. And then after I keep hearing about, how great it is and how terrible it is for other things. And constantly, I was like, well, they started working on this new idea of video mural. I'm like, this could be actually the right place to do it.
Right.
Because it have those extremes form like this. Terrible homelessness and the richest people on the planet that have changed the world, and in the middle, people walking naked and drag queens and performing artists and so how in 7 miles by 7 miles. So I was okay. I understand why. I want to understand why all those minds come from there, and it was a whole different experience to spend 6 weeks here shooting.
Okay, so when people say, well, what's the root of San Francisco? I always think to myself, well, it was founded on the gold rush, so already it's absurd to begin with, right? Yeah. So there's this absurdity of the riches and the poorest of the poor, this kind of and it's never really lost that. I mean, even with the tech boom, it's kind of like the gold rush. It's you either make it or you don't. I mean, the city hasn't changed that much in 170 years or 60 years.
That's interesting.
But when you started this project, what was kind of the initial goal, I guess? Because I want to get to the question about how much do you leave yourself a chance to change it kind of midway through when narratives start kind of appearing? You're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I mean, when you go into it, do you leave that kind of window for yourself to be
every day?
Okay.
Every day. I basically come with no sketch.
Okay.
So I every day I build a mural with the people, depending of if you come in and say I want to be in the mural interviewing someone, but you're not going to be that someone. You're going to be interviewing nobody, but really pretending you are, and then someone else would be, I want to be talking about issue. Oh, there's this guy. He wants to do an interview with someone. Would you be looking at him, and I show that person how you were acting, and then he's gonna speak to you like if you're standing or sitting according to it. That's how the whole mural was built, one by one. But yes, I had looked at Diego Rivera's painting. I had looked at all the other murals that have been done. I had taken references. I had loved, for example, in the Koi Tower, that, the guy who sells newspaper. There's one guy selling newspaper, and there's also a few men that have a newspaper in their hand. And you can tell that it tells something about that moment and what was the title at the time. So if you look here, the mayor of San Francisco had just died. Weinstein was on cover of Time. We got just all the paper that were there and just put them in here so that when you look at this in 100 years, you're like, oh wow, okay, that that was the reference of that time. But I left everybody in like they decided to be. So if this guy have his badge from whatever work because he was on a lunch break, he have his badge,
Yeah.
People wanted to be on their phone, they're on their phone. Someone's want to be sleeping, he's sleeping. It's really however people wanted to come, and then I have to assemble it. But I had to assemble it on the spot, not after when I was back at the studio.
Yeah, okay.
So you come in, you say I want to interview someone, and you're sitting exactly like this. Then as you go out, we record your audio, you say whatever you want. And this is going to be embedded to the mural forever. So if I click on you, I hear you say, hey, my name is Evan, and I've been, whatever, da-da-da.
Right.
And and then you start talking for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But we record that.
Right.
And then, you know, the next person is like, hey, well, I saw the track. It was amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. That's the audio. Okay, well, that guy, didn't got it. It's okay.
Yeah.
We record that. It's not an interview.
I think I just read that you, Diego Rivera, like the great like social realist, kind of muralist, like you inspired by him?
I mean, by muralism in general.
Right, yeah.
But it's just that one day I stumbled upon a book of his, and I took it in the projects where I've started, and I showed it to my friends, and I said, who would you be in that mural?
Yeah.
And they just pointed me right away at someone, each of the person. Even someone had no idea of this guy, of painting, of museum, of art, or whatever, they would just right away knew who they were. And who they would be represented by, you know, in the mural. And I always wanted to do the same, so the months after, I started shooting a mural in that project.
Yeah. It's interesting because I just got back from Detroit, and Diego Rivera's really famous Detroit industry murals. It's in the atrium there. It was when I read that about you, I was like, wow, it's so similar because in that mural he's got like Henry Ford and he's got like these kind of characters of the time built in with like the citizens of Detroit at the time. And I was thinking about what you did with this, and it's like you've got like little like local celebrities kind of pictured in. It's like it's like a new way of doing kind of social.
Were they the same size as the other in his mural?
I think they're a little bit bigger. Yeah, there's a little. Yeah,
I think.
There's a little.
In
bit
here,
of
the really important thing, everyone is on the same line.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone is represented equally horizontally. It's actually the longest mural, like horizontal. It's 210 feet by 17 feet high, but also no one is more important than another. No one is sharp and the other one's blurry. No one is bigger or smaller. It's really that was the base from the beginning.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. Even when you were first doing street art and like the famous photos of the stuff in the favelas, like all that stuff, like you've embedded yourself in communities before.
Yeah.
That's something that like you've taken with you and you continue to do. Is it something where you give yourself a grace period of like, all right, I need a little bit of time to like kind of feel like connected to the people I'm going to work with, or is it change? Like sometimes the spontaneity is like really important to the.
Actually, it's always been the same. It's by spontaneity.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not like I go and I live 1 month with the people and I walk. It's that I come and I say, hey, I want this to be ready in 1 month. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And people are like, wait. And then by this thing of like, hey, but do you know what's happening here? Like, no, but you tell me.
Right.
And then they're like, okay, well, let me first tell you. You need to know this and that and that. And I'm like, okay, well, so. Can I photograph you this way and then we paste you here and then is that way you first meet those guys and that guy, and that's how it works. But it's never like never the other way around. Like it's always I came in San Francisco day one, nobody knew about the project, and then we just there in the street with the truck, and there was nobody outside the truck.
Right.
Just we had to stop people in the street and be like, hey, do you want to be? Oh, I'm actually going to get my kids at school. Well, on your way back, you want to stop with your kid? Well, maybe okay, I'll stop by. And then if they stop by, we're like, hey, come in. Like, so what do you do? It's like stopping anyone in the street and saying, who are you?
Right.
But, you don't define yourself as just, I interview people. It's like many other things that defines you.
Right.
But it depends how you want it to be defined that day.
Right.
And so some would say, oh, okay, well, can I come another day and I'm actually this great drummer. Can I drum in your piece? And we're like, okay, well, you'll be in the theater on stage.
Right. Okay.
So when the curtains open and close, there'll be you at some point and people will see you drumming. And that was the case for every single person.
Yeah, and I guess that spontaneity gets people to maybe, in a way, like loses their inhibitions because they're like, well, okay, I didn't have any preconceived notions of doing this today, so I'll tell you.
Yeah, and often they don't even know who I am and stuff. They didn't even know this is going to SFMOMA. We didn't even know at the beginning when we started shooting the first week.
Okay.
So it was interesting because they come in the truck, it's like, oh wow, you guys have a good setup, good for you, So how did you live out of this, do you make books or that? And so
did anybody go like, oh, I know who you are?
Yeah, some did, of course, and like, oh yeah, sure, what should I do? And it was like, well, I don't want to tell you what you should do. You're in the project now, and every single person who I photographed made it to the mural. There's no selection.
Okay.
Like, oh no, you know what, I photograph you, you're not good enough. There's none of that. So we would walk with the people, especially on the video, because video takes longer until it's right, because your loop needed to loop.
Have you had a chance to spend this much time with one city like this in the past?
Not, except like I spend as much time in the favelas over here, but never with one city.
Yeah.
So I think, when I pasted in Istanbul or in places where I would stay for weeks, even then I get a feeling of it, but never that I could stop any person. Like I've met those 1,200 people. I photographed every single one and filmed. Like I feel that I could recognize any of them in the street, you know. So it's weird because I really had a moment with each one of them, and I hope, and that's my big goal, because for me the piece is not just revealing the piece. The piece is that actually people will connect within each other within this mural, but also by people going there, and it's a free space of the museum, and it's gigantic. So you're like, you know,
you can be like fully immersed
completely. And then next to you there'll be maybe one of the guy or one of the women who is in the mural, because of course the first thing you do when you're on, you know, I've experienced that all around the world. When I pasted, people who were on that pasting were always close by. Always like, yo, I dropped by, see how's my pasting doing, and they're explaining who they. Here, out of 1,200 people, there'll be a few people every day who's gonna be there, and so when you come see it, I won't be there explaining it to you. They'll be there explaining it to you.
Like, so I was here. This is what I was doing, and they'll talk about themselves.
So I'm more interested about their vision of the city than you know about me talking about it, and I think that's the main thing about this mural, is to create interaction. And about my whole work is just using, you know, videos, using social media, using the tools that we have, but not to create online work, but to create work that implicates that people will meet physically. You know, when I pasted that kid at the border, I wanted people to go there and interact physically there.
And that actually leads me to a question I want to ask. Like, you can't hide the fact that, like, in America right now, it's a very fascinating time. And, like, even though San Francisco is just one city in a massive, massive country, like, there is, do you kind of have this vision of, like, let's just actually talk. Like, let's actually have, because we're not really doing that well.
Out of all the city, it's a city that's ready to do it, actually.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know, I had that feeling here that because there's that openness, that people living in don't realize it. Often people would say, when they would look at the sketch, they're like, oh my God, that's true, all those people, you know. And I say, but, you know, I come from France. We don't have people walking naked in the street. Like, this would be the headline of the biggest newspaper if someone just started walking in the street. For you guys, like, oh yeah, there's a guy walking naked in the street. It's nothing. Sure. So you guys don't realize that anymore. There's lots of things that freedom that people have and took and earn, you know, once you're in it, you don't realize it.
I mean,
so
so I was thinking too, it's like, as somebody who grew up here, like, I kind of need something like this to sort of, like, remind me of, like, where I live, because I'm just kind of used
that is special. But I'm sure you travel, so you know coming back that you live in a special city. And so when I'm walking on one in New York at the same time, I had a hard time stopping people in the street because they're too busy. They wouldn't even, like, hear the first sentence of, like, hey, would you want to... Boom, they're already walking away, you know. Where here people, like, sometimes they say no, but at least they stop and like, oh, yeah, thank you, I'm busy, but, you know, it sounds great, have a good day, you know. When you lose that, suddenly you lose the connection within people.
And do you notice that in France? Is that, like, a problem where people don't...
No, in France it's more that people don't realize the chance they have, that we have medical care, that we have, you know, all this kind of help, so that it prevents you from, you know, going straight from losing your work to homeless the next month, you know. And we have all those, this chance, and people still don't realize it. I think it's a human thing. Once you get acclimated to a way of living in a context, then you don't see the benefit of it. You only see the problems of it. And it's great sometimes to see the problems, because it needs to be you need to make it better every day. But at the same time, you know, it's great sometimes to wake up and realize, well, you know, for all these things, it's amazing. And I've traveled in, like, fucked up places, and we're lucky, you know. So it's really it doesn't mean that everybody have to travel around the world to realize how lucky they are, but by maybe seeing a piece like this, the same way that I've looked at murals from other artists like Diego Rivera, I realized, wow, how everybody was connected to within each other, within the mural, how they're all part of that same group. And when you look at the San Francisco one, you realize, wow, what an amazing group of people. It looks almost unreal. Well, yeah, that's the city. That's, you know, what you get when you just stopped at all those locations where we stopped randomly in all sides of town. These are the people who came walking by the truck. So if I was doing it this month, I'd have 1,200 other people. It's, you know, this is just one representation of it. It's not the representation of San Francisco.
Right. And, you know, I had this like really wonderful docent who had just walked up to me and talked to me about the Diego mural, and it was that moment in time that he was talking about. And like this is again same thing, like this kind of expand, like this is 2000, well I guess in this case 2018.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. And it will always be forever.
Right. Yeah.
You can read the logo, the papers, the the swoosh on someone's shirt, and in 100 years people will be like, what was that? What was that thing? What was that thing that everybody hold in their hand that looks square and they will talk to it? You know, like it's gonna be something that people can look at in years and hear the story of every single person. But also we're setting up an app, and the whole book is actually AR, so you can point to any person and they start moving within the book.
Right.
The whole mural is actually, you can read it like this. There'll be also iPads that you can sit next to someone else and click on the story, but you can't listen it by yourself. You have to listen with someone else.
Which is great.
So it's the idea that exactly, and then also, you know, you can do it with your phone and then listen, you know, with your headphones if you walk closer from the mural. But the idea, the experience of it is by when you come and walk and sit at SFMOMA. I'm not going to do an iPad version while this is up, so that the full experience you have to come and sit here, you know.
So it does seem like this project in particular seems like a culmination of all the things that you've been working on in your career. Like it's
it's a little bit complete continuity of it's collage, but it's video, which I've been doing, and it's, you know, about a city instead of one neighborhood, and it's completely in the evolution of what I've been walking, and it shows me tons of perspective. You know, in these, all the clouds are moving, the cars are passing, and the people are. It's like there's no photo in there.
Right. Was there part of you like midway through you're like, this is like there's so much going on here.
Oh my God,
like I have
we were lost.
Okay.
We were lost the whole time.
That's good. That's good to admit that, because it's that makes it kind
of.
It's
that giant puzzle, and then you realize you had Draymond Green sending his ball to someone, but we forgot to have someone getting the ball. Yeah, and then the teacher girl comes and say, "You're like, what do you want to be?" I'm like, "I don't know. You know, I'm still in school and I play basketball." We're like, "Oh, do you want to receive the ball from Draymond Green?" I love Draymond Green. And then boom. But that's how we built it. You know. It could have been done 100 of other ways, and that was made with the time we had and with the people we met, and I can't believe how people were actually so good at, because everyone is in their own loop, so it's pretty tricky. You have to go back to the same position you started with.
Right.
So you can't just go and do something, okay, thank you. You have to go back to exactly same position.
You have to kind of tie so many loose ends.
Yeah,
together.
if your arm goes like that out, it means that you're going to cover someone else's face. So I had to remember you did that so that someone is not behind you. So, you know, at some point I wouldn't sleep at night anymore, because like, damn, I forgot that this guy, you know, was doing this. We got to move him, and then, you know.
So the show that is now just opened at Pace.
Yeah.
That is almost like the pieces that put this together, or is it just like a new presentation of
it's the sketches of it. So you will see this in like this piece in 5 layers. So you see through how every line's combined.
Okay.
That had allowed me to do then the video. So what you're seeing there, it's tiny section of the video, but you understand what it comes from. First you do this to see how everybody imbricate, and that was my sketch in the truck. And then we try to do this in video, but sometimes because someone is on a rollerblade or something, they're moving. So in the video, it changed slightly. Wow. I don't even know, when I look at it, I'm like, damn. If you tell me, let's go and do that now, I'll be like, no.
I'm really impressed how much you remember from it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know you immersed yourself, but still, like, there'd be at some point you'd be like, I don't remember, like, these.
I know, every single person I remember, because, you know, it's funny. It's very simple. They come in, and then you don't know what you want to do. They don't know, and then you're like, well, let's figure out, because there's someone else waiting. And then you're like, it puts you in this rush of creating. I'd rather walk like that than being, I have a 3 p.m. and I know that guy is going to do that, you know, it loses the excitement. It keeps me awake to actually not know.
But did like someone like Draymond Green, did he get word of it? He's like, all right, I'm going to show up? Or did he?
No, actually, really cool. I met him when I was scouting 6 months before. And he asked me what I was doing, and I showed him some stuff. I was like, oh, cool. And I said, I want to do this project. I even had an image to show him. He's like, well, you know, take my number and let me know if you do it. I'll come. But that's what I did. I just texted him, hey, man, we're in that truck. This is our daily location. The third day he showed up. I'm like, yo, what do you need me? I brought this, I brought a ball and that. And, you know, then that's it. It was that easy. and some other people like like they never showed up, like CEOs or whatever, and some other was just walking by and say, I'll do it. Our friends say, I'll call this guy, maybe he'll do it. That's how spontaneous it was, it was really everyone would either that's in there would either been there and like call a cousin or like have a friend or wanted to help in any way, or brought so many people brought us like pizzas or cookies. Or
I was gonna say, you probably ate well. You probably
we
just
were super well fed and had great people
for
lunch. We would always eat with people who from the neighborhood, but at the same time we visited also all the shelters in the city and spent time with the paramedic at night to follow them on their walk, and so we got to go through all this to also have a sense of what's going on, because like I've also never seen someone in the open daylight put a needle in his arm. You guys see that every day. I've been to crazy places in the world, but that I hadn't seen.
Yeah.
So it actually what shocked me.
My girlfriend runs a gallery here in the city. It's kind of off Union Square. Swoon actually has a show there.
Okay, cool.
And like once or twice a week, she's like, "Oh yeah, someone when I parked my car, someone's shooting up," and she's just like, I'm getting kind of numb to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I'm like, but like when we go somewhere else and we come home, you kind of remember. So it's like, that's the thing that's where, it's shocking, and I think it's getting out of control. So a lot of people are like, what do we do about that? Right.
That's why I think Proposition C and laws like that, because there's a way this can be changed.
Yeah.
You cannot like change the world, but like be your own town, be the worst example of all.
It's interesting because you doing this project, you probably learned more about local politics than people who live here. Just being like embedded in kind of like learning about like what people are thinking. Because to be honest, sometimes I forget,
Yeah, but actually not knowing that much.
Yeah.
And coming in and looking at this and be like, well, wait, there's like 30 or 40 companies that are like billionaires and that started here. And there's, people who, by choice or no choice, encounter homelessness, and how can that be solved? It's 7,000 people. There must be a way to actually, because it's still your town. You live within 7 miles. Let's just make it nicer for everyone. That's why Proposition C. I've heard some, interviews where, for example, the CEO Mark Benioff of Salesforce was like, "Hey guys, we're making billions. Like, what hundreds of millions a year would cost us? We don't even feel them. So let's just give it to the city and solve this fucking thing."
Yeah.
And just that was one of the interviews that really marked me of like, oh wow, he's talking about it straight and simple. But I couldn't believe that the head of Twitter then would say, no, this money should not. Where is the argument there? Why is there even a debate here?
Yeah.
And that's where you realize that some people are generous, some people are greedy, some people don't want things to change, some people think they should change by themselves and it's their fault. And then that's where you realize, okay, well, let's look. You're all in this. When I did it in the suburbs of Paris, there was drug dealers, there was people who targeted for terrorism, there was the mayor, there was this. But at the end, we're all living together. You cannot say, I photograph only the good people.
Right,
it's not that. It's you represent everyone. There's a bit of power, good and bad in each one of us. And so, that was not my choice, or my role to make the selection.
Yeah, I always feel like San Francisco is a really good microcosm of like the 21st century, which is like the extremities, and the rapid development, rapid wealth mixed with like the forgotten.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
In such a like fascinating way, because it is such a small city, so it really does like rub. It's not like New York where like it's.
I don't know sometimes where exactly.
It's so far away from like where you are at times. It's like you don't get it, but here it's like. Yeah, the beach is just 6 miles.
That's why
your infamous beach is just like 6 miles.
That's
away.
why I don't understand why this couldn't be an example to the world of like, well, this was in this shape and now this is how it is, but because we did that, and it would inspire so much cities, especially that the wealth is here, and that and that it's becoming intolerable, and also it's hard to commute and lots of things. So it's not like there's no opportunity. There's already a tramway line. There's already like tons of ways and tons of apps and stuff. So why not, make it, walk within your own background, like, playground, like, which is, your town. So I'll try to do my role in that because I got attached to the city with this piece. But I hope that this will inspire other people to to jump on, you know.
Yeah. What do you got? Anything else like?
Yeah, coming up.
You working on documentaries or anything?
Next month we pasting the biggest pasting ever done. It's at the Louvre in Paris.
Oh my God.
We're gonna basically excavate the pyramid.
Yes.
So that's
when's that gonna be? Is that gonna be? Will that be up like the 29th or the 31st of March?
It's actually from 26 to 29. So I think the 30th. It's when it's.
I might be there. Yeah.
So come a day earlier and paste. You can paste with us.
Oh my God.
Because it's hundreds of people a day pasting.
Okay.
Because this is gigantic. Like it's it's the plaza of the entire Louvre. So we're gonna be pasting day and night, but with volunteers.
So wait, it's only gonna be for 4 days, 5 days?
So 4 days of pasting it, and then the whole weekend it will be up. But then it's on the floor, so it will get destroyed pretty fast. So it's an ephemeral piece.
Okay.
But as we paste, you see it on live screen on the building.
Yeah.
So they'll put screen that you can see what you're doing, and then you will be live online and this and that. But the idea mainly is to implicate people to paste.
All right. So did you grow up in Paris or right outside?
No, in the suburbs.
Okay. I would assume that like doing something at the Louvre is like pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like there's like a little bit of that like it's pretty cool. It's like a check, like that's good.
I've done making the pyramid disappear, and already at that time I thought only dead artists could exhibit there. But now when I pitched them, they actually came to me and said, "Would you do something for the 30 years?"
Okay.
And I was like, I don't know.
30 years of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I came back with that crazy thing, thinking they'll never say yes, and they say, "Let's do it." I was like, "Oh shit, how do we do that?"
Nice. That's actually really good. Yeah. Well, yeah. Actually, I might be there, so that'd be kind of cool.
Perfect.
Wait, by the way, total aside, this is great. I watched the documentary on Oasis last night, Supersonic, and Liam and Noel's Manchurian accent, is that what you call it? What do you call it?
Mancunian
accent is so thick, and I forgot how thick it was. Like, you can't understand a damn word they say when they start really going for it.
At the risk of offending any northern listeners, I'm going to ask Evan to do his best Mancunian accent for us.
No, I'm not going to do it. I don't.
Come on, man. This is a safe place. This is a safe place.
This is not a safe place. If I was not feeling ill, I would try it.
That's lies. That's a put on cough, ladies and gentlemen. He's bottling it.
Maybe in a couple weeks when you and I are together in Scotland, I'll try it.
We're going away together for a trip to Scotland.
We're going on a trip to Scotland. No, okay, so back to your original question.
Yeah.
I actually appreciate having a little bit more of an outsider perspective in San Francisco because I think we who grew up here have developed such a negative connotation with our own city because of the pretty pervasive tech takeover. And I think often many of us who found it special and who had parents who grew up here and grew up in the Haight-Ashbury and grew up in the kind of hippie movement and the student movements in Berkeley, which my parents did, and grew, just my grandparents emigrated here, all this stuff. Like, I think it's nice to be reminded that our city is unique and different, that San Francisco is different compared to other U.S. cities. And I just think I've been for so long so negative about it that I appreciate somebody taking the time and actually maybe telling the story in a way that's a little bit more in depth than my kind of lazy assertions of the place I live now,
It's easy to walk down the street and go like, oh man, this used to be cool.
Oh, for sure. And that happens to everybody everywhere, right? So sometimes it does take like a little bit of an outsider to kind of remind you what's unique and what's fascinating about the place you live. And JR is good at doing that. He's good at diving in. He's got a good group of people that he works with, and they do a good job.
Pretty busy week. It feels like, definitely everyone's woken up. Like, I don't know if everyone's woke, but everyone's woken up by April. There's been so many different things going on just now that I it'd be quite nice to pick apart with you. Let's start with your boy, Cause, hitting the big numbers in auction.
Boy, bro had a good week, didn't he? My lord. I think it goes to show that whatever talk of Asia is a burgeoning, art collecting scene. Like, I think Asia is kind of where it's at, right? I mean, it felt like Basel, Hong Kong had a freshness and a attention that was pretty exciting. I had some FOMO for sure.
Because people have been saying it for a long time that this is the market, this is where the exciting stuff's going to happen. And this was the first year for me where I really started to see it. Maybe because I wasn't there and I was looking at it as an outsider, but I think certain elements made that tick. And I think, Cause's place within that definitely cemented, I guess, the Asian market's relevance in this scene.
Right. And I think also it goes to show that all these articles that we've been reading about, well, why is Cause why is this market going up so fast? Why, who is this guy? Who's this guy, Brian Donnelly, who goes by Cause? Like, what is this? Oh, it's not going to last. Like, all these art advisors and people who have PhDs and shit talk about this. Like, they don't, they talk about it in a really ignorant way. And it's like, no, I think what you don't understand is that the younger generation of art buyers are not the same as the old art buyers, and that perhaps there is a few artists that are just going to not make sense to you, and it's just going to happen, and they're not going to be able to explain it
without sounding dated. Like all those, I've read a good few articles, and I kind of, I sit somewhere in the middle on this whole thing. I'm not one of those guys that's like, just, I need this in my life. I need this t-shirt. I need this little companion. I need all this. I respect his position within there, but reading some of the articles, you can't help but feel this like really out of touch elitism that kind of comes through it. They love, like, you can, take a shot every time you read the word millennial. It just feels like there's a bitterness to this market or this side of the market that they don't get, so therefore it suddenly becomes invalid.
Right. And I think there seemed to be this attempt, especially before this Nego auction, to really make people who were interested in buying Cause's work feel stupid and feel like they didn't belong. I think there was even that great line in the ArtNet article about, if you think Cause is relevant, you might as well think the Kardashians are irrelevant. Or are relevant. And I remember thinking to myself, well, the Kardashians are the most popular people on Earth now. So regardless if you care about them or not, there's a relevancy in that, unfortunately.
Yeah, you can't argue. You can't argue with the relevancy of that. That's the wrong thing to be picking apart. They are relevant whether you agree with it, like their work or not. Right. They are still relevant. So you're going to have to try and find another avenue. And that's the thing I've found most, I guess, kind of a letdown, because I think there is perfectly valid arguments to make on the, the position that Causes in, the validity of having a £15 million, $50 million piece, of a sort of like a bastardization of The Simpsons and the Beatles kind of go. And it's like, okay, make that argument, but make it. Like, have substance, put meat on the bones, and then make the argument. And I've not read any of these ones without kind of coming away going, that just feels like a bitter old man out of touch.
Right, and it also, it sort of takes away from the fact that Cause has had museum shows. He had what was one of the most, I still think, I only saw it in photos, but his installation at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park was beautiful. Like, it takes away from the fact that Cause actually has done many institutional projects. So it's not like he's so left field where it's like, who is this guy? It's like, it's a little bit like, it sort of devalues the fact that he's done a bunch of work before that. And it just so happens he's having his moment, which happens to a lot of people. His moment is a little bit more pop because he's sort of a new face of how art looks in the 21st century. So, yeah, I felt like a lot of the criticisms about him felt really bitter and not like really well thought out.
Do you think then, as an artist, if that happens, you have the moment where you're like, holy shit, that just happened, that's amazing, my place in the world is higher? Or do you think you automatically go, and shit, where is my place in this? Do I have to completely reevaluate what I'm doing and try and change things up and become interesting and fresh again? Or do you think he's just on a trajectory where no matter what, touches, it's going to turn to gold.
I mean, I would assume no matter what happens, when you set your record for at auction and you put a 30-meter floating piece of art that you designed into a harbor at Art Basel and floated around, it was like the most photographed thing. You know, like I feel like you might have to be like, oh, okay. Like, even JR, like, I just did the Louvre. Okay. Like, I'm sure there is a little bit of like, maybe they do take a little bit of a moment of pause. But I think the thing is, then maybe they don't. Maybe they just Picasso it out and just keep working. And just keep making work constantly and just don't look back and don't get too caught up in the buzz.
Do you think there's an element that this is kind of validating that particular style, that particular trajectory? Whereas one of the comparisons that was made in one of the articles I read was versus sort of Jenny Savile. And it was, you know, okay, so if you want to compare a sort of a pop art version of The Simpsons versus a Jenny Savile painting, there's an artistic depth that it doesn't necessarily hit.
If you look back, I feel like they're the ones who won the 20th century in terms of, not one, but just they to me seem like the two big, giant artists of the 20th century. And both went at it in completely different ways, with completely different practices and completely different storytelling methods and different processes. And Cause just happens to be a little bit more on the Warhol tip, and which is a little bit more of like, how do you reflect pop culture back to the art world, and how do you internalize the kind of popular consciousness, whereas Picasso is a little bit more of like self-preservation and self kind of analysis, which is I think what you're trying to say with the Jenny Savile and Cause. It's like Jenny is more in that Picasso camp. Doesn't mean one's not better than the other. It's just different examinations of where art can go. It's not just Cause, it's like his friends that he knows. It's like the other artists that he surrounds himself with. It's his personal art collection. It's like a full-on encompassing person with different like kind of it's like he has all these different fascinating little stories around him. Whereas like somebody like Jenny is a little bit more like the artist in the studio painting alone kind of. It's just different parts of a great story, I think.
Do you think then that Cause is the art world's Kim Kardashian?
No, I don't agree with that. Because I think like that, unfortunately, that just comes with a little bit of like an insult, and I don't know. It's just...
Why?
Because when you say Kardashian, it seems like you're trying to put somebody down, right? No one ever says it in a positive way.
No one in our circle says it a positive way, but if you look at other circles, they would look at it as like that was the goal, like that you couldn't be more accepted and better within their hopes and dreams than being a Kardashian. So yes, we might look at it as a put down, but I certainly didn't mean it in that way.
No,
so
I know.
In terms of going back to what we were talking about earlier, so do you think in those terms, looking at it in that respect, that causes, the art world's Kim Kardashian?
No, I think what he's doing is, obviously I think what he's doing is way more fascinating than the way that they've manipulated the media.
Look at it objectively, though.
No. I'm trying to. I'm trying to really dig deep and think about this one.
I have a question though, right? So in that respect, because I know that you like doing what you do. There's two sides, and I felt this for the very first time the other day, and someone had posted. It was an article from a really kind of popular outlet about Disneyland. And I was like, you know what? This is absolute bullshit. And I completely didn't agree with it. And then I kind of went back and I was like, oh, hang on. I know this person that's written this, and I've got to take away that knee-jerk reaction. And I can't go out and just, fire stuff off on Twitter willy-nilly. Do you ever find yourself... I just said willy-nilly. Do you find yourself ever having to pull back And if so, how do you deal with that? Pull back from what might be your natural gut reaction to then putting on the hat of, hang on, not necessarily I'm the, editor-in-chief of Juxtapoz, but just like, actually, I'm in this scene and I know these people and I need to reassess how I'm reacting to this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I do it often. If I could definitely fire off more sort of shit-talking, aggressive messages to people that I think are wrong or anything, often. But I'm really trying to teach myself, because I used to get really emotional about it, and I'd write comments back to people on Instagram and get really upset. If people were maybe misinterpreting our content or just misinterpreting a movement in general. But I really, at this point, I'm trying to play a little bit more of a long game and let things sort of kind of develop a little bit before just like going on full on 2019 Twitter wars with people. It's sort of why I'm sort of like letting the cause thing play out a little bit before comparing it to a Kardashian movement, or I'm sort of like it's like one thing, like you could write something really passionate and awesome about like what Jamios is doing in Berlin right now, like with the ballet and the dance stuff, because like that feels like very genuinely sort of small and kind of intimate. But like with these grand overarching statements about where the scenes are going, like I kind of like to take like a tiny step back and let it sort of soak in, and then sort of try not to shit talk or try not to get really upset and overly passionate. Does that answer it?
I think you got there. There's an answer. It's not necessarily the answer I wanted, but I'll take it.
Like it doesn't do any like to participate in the constant dialogue of people wanting to be heard and wanting to be told that their opinion matters. I think like you just have to take a step back occasionally and just like let it play out amongst like a group of people, and that becomes more of the story than actually integrating yourself into it and defending. Because like we know these artists and we spend time with them, so you know their true intentions, and occasionally you get like a little passionate want to defend them, and I just find I gotta learn to take a step back and just let people argue it out, and that's part of the entire story is people arguing about it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've found a little bit conflicting in the past is seeing either, kind of players within the scene defending artists, and you're like, I know you're defending this person because you either know them or you want to, you're looking at this from a wider perspective rather than actually just going, here's the kind of the real black and white of how someone else will see this. And actually, maybe they should be kind of held accountable for their actions in some respect.
Right.
That was very cryptic for any listeners listening. For you guys listening.
But like what ends up happening is that all your heroes in life end up doing something that really, really bums you out. No matter who they are, no matter how underground, no matter how popular, they always end up doing something that makes you go, God, I have to keep defending them. Like Kanye West is like the easiest example of like you're just like, oh God, I gotta keep like what? You just get tired of I'm not gonna defend.
But then he comes out and he does the Sunday service, and you're like, oh my God, that's Kanye. You're back, baby. All is forgiven. Like, can you just stop talking about politics and just keep doing that gospel Sunday service? Like he's doing that Coachella. That is gonna be so sick.
They're your boys, so you stick up
Right.
for them, kind of thing.
So, what are you and I? We're going to be in Aberdeen together, which is going to be fun.
So we're going to be in Aberdeen in 2 weeks, in 2 weeks from now, and maybe a week from when you listen to this. I'm going to be in Belgium next week, which is probably when you're going to be listening to this. So there's going to be a Radio Juxtapoz event / podcast coming from there in some respect. We don't quite know what shape it is yet, but there's going to be something and it's going to bang because there's some cool artists going in there, and I'm going to make sure that the round table is like hitting that, and we'll just, we'll have a few beers and get some shit talking going. And then in Aberdeen, we can do something kind of on that respect as well. We don't quite know what we're going to do together, but there's going to be something coming out of that you guys will get to hear.
Just everybody just needs to know there's going to be a lot of Evan and Doug together podcasts, like actually physically in the same room coming up. We got a lot of stuff, Doug.
We got a lot of stuff.
We're going to be just buddies. We're going to be living together pretty much.
We're going to go from just podcast hosts to friends.
We're working on the friendship. It's a really, what you guys don't know is when we're not, when we don't do this, it's real tumultuous.
We can't stand each other. I got one thing I want to finish up with, or I'm not necessarily finish up with, but I we kind of going for an hour. The Mercedes thing. The Mercedes Detroit thing. You got any thoughts on this? So basically, for I don't know, I guess the first time this year, there's been a case of a brand using, hiring a space, a venue, a location, and then using that location as a backdrop for a promotional campaign. In this case, it was Mercedes. A bunch of photos appeared of these really fancy high-end cars in front of artists' murals. Now, the kicker on this one is that the precursor before anything really transpired was that Mercedes started suing the artists ahead of any other legal process. So we've seen this before with Revoke and H&M. We've seen it before with Machino, and I can't remember who the artist was. But this could, once again kind of set a precedent if brands are allowed to just use artists' work whenever they want for whatever campaign they want.
Well, it's not only that, they know what they're doing is wrong. They know that they're picking that wall because they like the art behind it. The agency that's making the commercial knows better. It's like everybody knows, but they just choose to play this game of naivete, which is totally fucking bullshit. And they just pretend as if they don't know the rules. They know the rules. And then they pretend like they're not going to understand that nowadays, with social media reaction, there's enough people that follow the art world who will constantly just talk shit about your cars, talk shit about your brand. It's so weird to me. Like, is no one learning? It just doesn't make any sense.
The thing I found hilarious was the main difference between this and the H&M one with Revoke was everyone was like, screw H&M, I'm not going to buy from there anymore. And now it's like, people are like, yeah, I'm not going to buy Mercedes anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, there's a little bit.
I didn't really have many of them.
Well, but here's the bullshit thing. The people at Mercedes or the agency is trying to gear themselves towards young urban professionals who like graffiti and street art. There's no other reason to put a Mercedes in front of a mural, like a street art mural, unless you're trying to cater towards an audience that lives within the urban confines of American cities or European cities around the world. So they're using street art and graffiti to be like this kind of like faux your lifestyle. You got your Mercedes, you got your mural, you got your loft, you got your designer dog and your designer handbag. It's just like they know so much better, and they know what they're doing, and it could easily be squashed by just reaching out to every muralist in Detroit. Probably has their Instagram handle on the corner of the goddamn mural. So just reach out.
Right, I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one. If I'm a location scout or I'm doing a production, I hire a venue. I want a location to show this new car in. I pick this location. Now, I've contacted the venue, I've contacted the local council, and I've got clearance to film on this street. I've got clearance to film on this venue. Now, I've paid the right people and cleared it with the right people to be able to have access to this, because the murals in the market this isn't an illegal piece of graffiti that just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. These are organized murals. They're sanctioned and they're in place through legitimate process. So I've gone through legitimate process to be able to shoot from this venue. Whose responsibility is it to then say, well, actually, there's a stipulation here. If you want to use this wall, you have to clear it with this artist. If you want to shoot in this venue or this location, you can shoot as much as you want, but you can't have this wall on it. You can't have this artwork on it. Whose responsibility is that?
I actually really understand what you're saying, and I agree. And I think it needs to start happening is where organizers of these mural festivals need to start creating stipulations for the artists just to sign off that their stuff might be used for commercial purposes. Like, I think that would probably be the smart way to do it, because, I mean, let's be honest, Detroit is a car city. There's probably going to be some car ads shot there. Like, it just makes sense. So there is part of me that feels like everybody needs to kind of, like, get all their paperwork in order beforehand. But I think the problem I have is just I just don't understand what brands think is going to happen once they start bringing out the lawyers from the get-go on these kind of things. You know, it's like, why can't they just have a cordial conversation with the artist behind the scenes? You know, I don't think that's happening.
I think they were talking with the artists, and as far as I'm aware, just what I heard through the grapevine is that they were actually talking with the artists, or several of the artists involved in this kind of, you know, this story. And while they were doing that, they were actually filing the lawsuit, which made it really, really snaky. And that was like, yeah, you know, fuck you. But what made it different, or what I've seen as a different response to, say, the Revoke H&M, which was the last main one that we had, was it feels like there's less, I don't know, there's not as much fire and fury going into this. And it almost feels like, okay, this is the one that goes out. Then the next one, people would be like, there's a little bit less appetite. And then it eventually gets to the point where it's just normalized. You know, and this is how I kind of felt about seeing adverts, you know, big mural adverts going up. I remember when I first lashed out at that on my channel, and it was like, you know, boom, people were like, yes, thank God someone's saying this. I did it again because there was some other advert. And then each time it kind of came up, or something like that came up, it just became softened. And now people, if I post something like that, a lot of the response is just like, people are making money. So what? And I think if they just keep chipping away, it eventually just becomes an accepted, normalized part of the culture.
I think another kind of complicated part of this, too, is that for the most part, for these mural festivals, the artists don't get paid a ton of money to do the murals. So maybe they just feel like they want some added value for what they painted. But, yeah, I'm with you. It's like...
Well, I was just playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with any of that stuff. It's just like, this is how it could possibly be.
I'm with you in the, like, apathy grows pretty quickly, you know? I think the case with Revoke was that he's such a popular artist. He was able to garner a little bit more awareness because he and his friends are so popular. So that helped a lot.
I think it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out.